Alright, so this is Comparative Advantage by Cameron and Leska-Kent. As you can see in the comic, everybody is specializing these days, so we're going to go over specialization and why and how and who should specialize in what. Yada, yada, yada. So absolute advantage is one party is better at producing something than another, so this does not determine who should specialize in what for trade, because if one country is better at producing everything than another, then they can still specialize in things and be better off through trade. And an example of an absolute advantage is if it takes 5 hours to produce a cell phone in America, but only 2 hours to produce one in China, then China has the absolute advantage in producing cell phones. And then there are two methods for determining the kinds of advantages. There's input method, where you measure it using like the input, so in this case time, and then the output method, where you do it using what you produce per unit of input. So an input method example is it takes India 2 hours to make a laptop, and it takes Australia 4 hours to make a laptop, so that's using time, what you put in to make something, and how much you have to put in to make it. And then the output method example is America produces 100 ears of corn for every mile of cultivated land, and England produces 60 ears of corn per mile of land. So that's going by what you produce per the input, instead of just how much you input to get one unit of product. And then opportunity cost is what we use to find comparative advantage. And so it's just what you're giving up to produce something, like what you could have produced with the resources you used to produce something. And the production possibilities curve is the graphical representation of opportunity cost. So you have one good on one axis, one good on the other, and then just the more you produce of one thing, the less you can produce of the other. So for determining comparative advantage, calculate opportunity cost for the parties involved in producing a good, and whoever has the lower opportunity cost has the comparative advantage and should specialize in that good. And specialization in trade. Trade enables nations to specialize. It can make everybody better off. Two entities will always have the different opportunity costs for producing things, so they can always specialize and trade and be better off. Comparative advantage using the input method. An example is it takes France 90 hours to produce a unit of cloth and 80 hours to produce a unit of wine, and it takes Spain 100 hours to produce a unit of cloth and 120 hours to produce a unit of wine, so who should specialize in what? So if you calculate the opportunity cost, France gives up 8/9 of a unit of wine per unit of cloth it produces, and Spain gives up 6/5 of a unit of wine per unit of cloth it produces. So since France has the lower opportunity cost for producing cloth, it should produce cloth, and Spain should produce wine. So, and then doing a comparative advantage using the output method. So India produces 50 ears of corn per day and 25 cups of coffee per day, and China produces 25 ears of corn per day and 50 cups of coffee per day. So who specializes in which? India is shown, when you calculate it, to have an opportunity cost of 2 ears of corn per cup of coffee it produces, and China has an opportunity cost of only 0.5 ears of corn per cup of coffee it produces. So since China has a lower opportunity cost for producing coffee, it should produce coffee, and India should specialize in corn. And then why do nations specialize in trade? Well, if you look at it, before specialization, India could make 50 ears of corn per day and 25 cups of coffee per day. And assuming a one-to-one trade agreement, if India focuses completely on corn, it can make 100 ears of corn with the time it took to make 50 ears of corn and 25 cups of coffee. And then, so if it can get back the cups of coffee it would normally have by trading 25 of its 100 ears of corn. So then it has the 25 cups of coffee that it used to produce, and then it still has 75 ears of corn, which is 25 more than it used to. So that shows the benefits of trade and specialization. And then my sources, just various definitions, clarification.
Created using Powtoon.